Hello and welcome to Freedom News, the news you can use to help keep Canada free. Today I have for you from Jason Kenney's own YouTube channel a video concerning his bit of involvement in the Vice Admiral Mark Norman case. Of course, when all this thing all started with the procurement of a new supply ship for the Royal Canadian Navy, Jason Kenney was Minister of Defense under the previous Conservative Harper government. He goes on to, he says, of course, that he was prepared to testify on behalf of the defense and provide them with some information. Of course, I have a video in his own words so that he can communicate this to you himself. I hope you enjoy.
Hi folks, I just wanted to comment on something that's a little bit outside of my current wheelhouse of responsibility, and that is the unbelievably unfair trial against Admiral Mark Norman that was just, where charges were just dropped and suspended today. I know Mark Norman. In fact, I was Minister of National Defense when many of the issues of controversy occurred. I worked with Admiral Mark Norman, then head of the Canadian Navy, and when I was Minister of National Defense in 2015 on a critically urgent project for the Royal Canadian Navy. That was the procurement of an interim joint supply ship to provide equipment, fuel and supplies to the Royal Canadian Navy. There's a long backstory here about how Canada ended up with a critical shortage of supply ships, but that's where we were when I became Minister of National Defense at the beginning of 2015. There were competing proposals about how to provide an interim joint supply ship for the Navy, and some proposals that would have taken up to 3 years to provide that critical support function for the Navy. But I worked directly with then Commander of the Navy, Vice Admiral Norman, to come up with an accelerated process which ended up with the Cabinet deciding to sign a contract with Davie Shipyards to produce an interim joint supply ship, which, as it turns out, was provided to the Navy on time and under budget. I think this is one of the very few military procurement projects in recent Canadian history, at least, that was satisfied on time and on budget. Now, it was subsequent to that, in October of 2015, that the Trudeau government came to office, and their Minister for Public Works, Scott Bryson, apparently decided to persuade his cabinet colleagues to suspend the decision that had been made to procure this critical joint support ship for the Royal Canadian Navy because, for regional political reasons, he wanted the contract to go to the Irving shipyards in Halifax. Now, the rest is now in the public domain, but clearly Admiral Norman simply wanted the necessary equipment for the Navy at the earliest possible date so it could actually function as a modern Navy. So that's the backstory. And I just wanted to say, in light of the decision of the Crown not to proceed with criminal charges against Admiral Norman for breach of the public trust, let me just say this. I know Admiral Norman. I worked with him on this issue, and I regard him as a person of the highest integrity, of great commitment to public service, to our military, a man of deep ethical values, who never would have violated the law in his service as Commander of the Canadian Navy. And I think that this entire prosecution of Admiral Norman has been an utter travesty. It is shocking to see how his reputation has been dragged through the mud, and he has had to spend I gather something like $500,000 to defend himself against charges that, based on my knowledge of the case, were completely baseless and have simply resulted in the withdrawal of those charges and his complete vindication and exoneration. But where does Admiral Norman go back now to find, to recover whatever reputational damage that he has lost? So I simply wanted to say, as somebody who has a personal knowledge of the issues that have been at play, who knows Admiral Norman, that I am appalled by how he has been treated by his government, and I would like to congratulate Admiral Norman on this vindication. I have contributed to his legal defense fund on GoFundMe. I certainly hope that he will now recover the costs of his defense from the Crown, which so unjustly has hounded him for the past 2 years. But if not, I would encourage people to go and support paying for his legal bills on his GoFundMe account. I also met for about 2 hours with Admiral Norman's legal defense team last year in Toronto, and gave them information which I believe would have helped with his exoneration had this case gone to trial. And let me salute his legal team for their excellent work. I offered to testify in his defense at trial, but thankfully will not go to that. So I'm speaking in my capacity as former Minister of National Defense, simply to salute a proud and great Canadian, to say, just as a Canadian, I'm sorry, Admiral Norman, for what you have gone through, but thank you for your service, and I hope that will continue in the future, and I hope that we will never again see a outrageous political prosecution of this nature.
Well, that's all I have for today. Like if you like, share, comment, and of course, subscribe. And remember, working together, we can help keep Canada free. Thank you, and have a good day.